So at this time, please welcome Steve Hawkins.
John, I did notice you said Hawking, right? That the first time you introduced me was Hawking.
Hawkins.
It is Hawkins, that's right. And you know, Stephen Hawking died.
You do believe in God, right?
Oh,
Not Hawking.
oh no, nowhere near. You'd be surprised how many people ask me, "Are you related to Stephen Hawking?" I mean, I know. It's definitely not a physical resemblance, that's for sure. But no, I'm Steve Hawkins. I'm the marketing director from the Oklahoma History Center, and I'm here today to talk about the History Center. But always the first question I ask is, do you know where the History Center is? How many know where the History Center is? Okay, all right. Of those that know where it is, how many have been in there? Okay, all right, good. That's a majority percentage, that's for sure. You'd be surprised. I think the Oklahoma History Center is one of the best kept secrets in all of Oklahoma. It's right on 23rd Street, right across the street from the governor's mansion. We've got a plane hanging in the window and a small sign out front, a little brick sign that says Oklahoma History Center Research, Museum, and something else. People don't know. I get calls all the time wanting to know if we're part of the FAA because of the plane hanging in the window, whether we're an arsenal because we're a great big building, and whether we're a hospital for some reason. There's a lot of windows in the building. So I want people to know where the Oklahoma History Center is, what it is, and why it's there. And how long it's been there, by the way. That big curved building, by the way, has been there about 14 years. We've been open for about 12. It is the ultimate Oklahoma, what's it called, antique roadshow, if you will. We've got things from prehistory, from when the Caddo Indians were the only ones here in this land, up to the point where thunder hit town. We've got it all. As a matter of fact, when you drive by that building, there are things in there that people driving by that building will never, ever see and can't imagine that we've got. Number one, we've got one of the biggest gun collections west of the Mississippi in the basement. How many saw Raiders of the Lost Ark? Okay. Remember at the very end, there's a curator that has the boxed up Ark of the Covenant, and he's putting it on a forklift, and he's taking it back into a warehouse full of other crated up objects. We have that, not the Ark of the Covenant. Actually, I don't know. We've got so much down. I'll look. We've got one of those. One end of that building, we have 215,000 square feet. One end of that building to the other, underneath the first floor, is collections. We have things down there, again, that the public will probably never see. It all belongs to Oklahoma. We've got cars, we've got teepees, we've got musical instruments played by stars and celebrities, we've got furniture. We've got a Steinway grand piano. I'm not going to tell you which governor it was, but Steinway grand piano that the governor's wife didn't like the color of the Steinway grand piano, so she took a brush and painted it black. Beautiful piano. Now it looks like something in one of the honky-tonks that I've played before. I'm a guitar player. Okay, by the way, the cell phone, thanks for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Several years ago in our church, we have a great preacher. Somebody's cell phone went off, and without skipping a beat, he looked right at him and said, "That better be Jesus." I love that. I love that. Okay. When did the Oklahoma Historical Society become the Oklahoma Historical Society? I'll give you 5 years, either side.
1895.
I'm going to give it to you. 1893. 1893. Where did it start? I have no other gifts. I can give away the keg, I guess, but where? Specific town. What town? He's got a place in mind. Where? No. No. Two more guesses. Where did the Oklahoma Historical Society start? No. One more. Kingfisher. Kingfisher. W.P. Campbell and his brother owned a little print shop there. They decided it was a great idea to start collecting all the newspapers in Oklahoma Territory for posterity and history's sake. So they started collecting all these newspapers, and then their little print shop got full of newspapers. So they put in for some money with the Territory, and the Territory gave them some money for a little warehouse. And at that point, newspapers, flags, banners, arrowheads, all kinds of stuff started being donated to them. That was the beginning of the Oklahoma Historical Society. W.P. Campbell in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. So you can go home and impress somebody with that. Okay. We'll pass these around, or please take one of these rack cards. Kind of gives you a little bit of information about the History Center. But again, we've been there now for about 12 years. We've enjoyed a great big building. You know where we came from? What building we were in before? It's the Supreme Court. That's right. And if you go to the Supreme Court now, it's just beautiful. All the artwork there, the statues, everything that's there belonged to us. Justice Cogger came over when they were furnishing the building, and Yvonne Cogger, and she came over and she said, "We'd like to borrow some of your artwork and some of your artifacts for the Supreme Court." Okay, Oklahoma law says we can't do that. However, when a Supreme Court justice says we want, we give. There are 500, 600 pieces over there, and it is gorgeous. The building is beautiful. If you ever get a chance, go over and take a tour of the Supreme Court building. You'll be really impressed. They did a great job. They really did. But again, all those artifacts, everything there, came from our collections area where the Steinway grand piano lies right now. Again, we've been there 12 years, and we got there thinking we need the space because we were running out of space. Okay, we've been there 12 years, and we're running out of space. Our closets are full, our warehouses are full, but we still take in artifacts. They've got to be Oklahoma artifacts. I mean, we get calls. I get calls all the time. We're in my great-uncle's house, and we got behind the wall, and there's a copy of the Constitution. There's a copy of the Declaration of Independence. And they bring them in, and it's one that somebody's bought in the Ozarks, as a souvenir. We will take in artifacts. If some of your family members have something that they want preserved in the right way and preserved for a long, long time in their name or your family's name, bring it to the History Center. But it's got to be Oklahoma branded. We can't take something that came from Connecticut, Florida, South Carolina, something like that. It's got to be Oklahoma branded. In the History Center, we have 5 galleries. We have a gallery that's dedicated more or less to oil and gas, land run, and that's something else. Did you know, John, that land run is now a politically incorrect term? Did you know that? We get calls from teachers that land run has a negative connotation to it now. That's true. I get chills of the flakes that come through the phone. It's supposed to be Pioneer Days now. We're supposed to call it Pioneer Days. We have a trunk program that we send out trunks to schools that are different topics and different themes. One of them was the land run trunk. We started getting these calls, not just 1 or 2, but dozens and dozens of calls saying, you've got to change the name of that. The connotation, it's theft. It's savagery. It's slavery. You've got to change the name. So our education department, depending on who you talk to, will call it the Pioneer Day land run.
Sounds like you need to re-educate them.
Yeah, boy. Isn't that the truth? Anyway, we have a gallery that is dedicated to the commerce of Oklahoma. It's it's not our newest, but it's the biggest one we've ever done. It's an entire gallery, about 50,000 square feet, dedicated to the commerce, the history of commerce in Oklahoma. All the way from when the Caddo Indians were here trading with the French up to when thunder hit town. It's an incredible exhibit. You've got to come in and see that. Then we've got the Native American or American Indian exhibit. 78% of the people that come into the History Center come there to see that exhibit. People that come into Oklahoma from other states, they want to know where the Indians are. That's just the way it is. They want to know where the Indians are, and they want to know why there's not more tumbleweeds. That's true. But that's the most popular exhibit we have. Now, in our temporary exhibit room, right now, our newest exhibit has drawn a lot of attention. It's called Welcome Home, Oklahomans in the Vietnam War. After years and years and years and years of putting the Vietnam vets on a shelf or in a closet or hiding them somewhere, all of a sudden, the national consciousness woke up. It's like, we owe. We need to say thank you. We need to say welcome home. So, we're doing our part right now. Last November, we opened up Welcome Home. It's actually historic occurrences of the war, before the war, during the war, and after the war. The effects on the Oklahoma families. You know, the doctors, the farmers, the pharmacy owners. Pre-war, during the war. We have a lot of artifacts from the war, but we also have a lot of testimony. We have touch screens with testimonies from lots and lots of people. Matter of fact, I saw a couple of them out here, just walking a while ago, that are on those screens. Outside the exhibit are two things that of incredible dramatic note. There were 988 plus service people that gave it all. We have a list of all of those people that are recorded that died in this war. In addition to that, we have dog tags made for each one of them, hanging there. And if you don't get chills looking at that, then you need to go have a blood test and have them ask you what sex you are. It's a great, great exhibit. By the way, a little story about that, and then I'll turn it over to Gary. We were planning this exhibit. We've been planning it for about 2 years. And we got to the very end of the planning, and we were going to add that to it. And we thought, boy, having the dog tags would be a really, really special thing. And by the way, if you know any veterans, families of the veterans that lost somebody in the Vietnam War, let me know. Call me with a name, and I'll have a dog tag made for that person, and they're free. We'll give them to you. We planned on this part of the exhibit. And we thought, okay, how are we going to make these things? How are we going to do that? We just hammer them out, one by one, 988 of them. That's quite a chore. How are we going to do that? Well, we adjourned the meeting. I walked out in the hall. Our director walked out in the hall with me. And one of our curators was coming up the walk and met us. And he goes, I just had the weirdest call. A guy out in Alva called me. He's got this World War II dog tag making machine, and he doesn't know what to do with it. My director looked at me, I looked at my director, we both shook a little bit, and by golly, we have a World War II, a 1941 dog tag machine that we made all those dog tags with. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Okay, great segue. With our appreciation for those veterans, the ones that gave all, the ones that served, and the ones that suffered when they came back. They had to take their uniforms off before they hit the airport. I mean, those stories are real, by the way. With this respect we've got for those that gave their service to us and that are giving their service to us now, I came to know Gary Banz, Representative Banz. Gary was instrumental in making the Honor Flights program and making Oklahoma designated as a hub. The Honor Flights, how many know what that is, the Honor Flights program? Okay, that's where there's a World War II memorial in D.C. Okay, I think it was when was it, 2009? 2004 it was dedicated. Okay, 2004. Think about how old those World War II vets were about that time. Okay, it's kind of late putting that in. Those veterans need to see that. They need to see it. But again, travel, accommodations, the expense of getting there, overwhelming. They needed help. The Honor Flights program was put together to help those guys and ladies get to D.C. Okay, up until a certain point, though, it was only in certain hubs, St. Louis and Dallas. And so the guys had to actually get there. They couldn't just go out to the airport here and fly to D.C. Gary and a troop of other guys, other people, went on this campaign to make Oklahoma City designated as a hub for the Honor Flights program. An incredible, incredible program. He wrote a book about it, and it's full of pictures of some of these guys on the flights, on some of the processes they went through, names, places. That book is here. We've got a video of the flight, of the Honor Flights program, a DVD. It's available. But I've taken up more time than I should have. I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Representative Gary Banz.
Thank you. A quick segue. The legislative time that I spent at 23rd and Lincoln can aptly be described by the little goofy line that I heard not too long ago. It said, "Roses are red, violets are blue. Some poems rhyme and some poems don't." So that's your takeaway when you need to explain to somebody what's happening or not happening at 23rd and Lincoln. I did have over the years people ask me when I was there if I would write a book about my experience, and I always declined. It wasn't that I didn't have a lot of material, but I did come up, Charlie, with a title. If I ever wanted to call time out and do that, we would call it a live round in the chamber. And I had 2 or 3 colleagues that would have gotten an entire chapter devoted to them. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you today, and it's my responsibility and my honor today to join with Steve and the History Center folks to answer some questions, give you some details about the book that he made reference to. I know that most of the time when you meet, you deal with policy kinds of things, and this obviously deviates in the form of the program. But the Oklahoma Honor Flight program spanned technically from about September of 2009 to April of 2016. But to help you understand how all that came together, I need to give you a little bit of background and perspective and the 30,000-foot view of what we were up against. Steve's already mentioned that the memorial was built 6 decades after the service of the people we were honoring. They were, at the time the memorial was dedicated, May 29th, Memorial Day weekend, May 29th of 2004. Those guys and gals were all in their late 80s and early 90s at that time. The national movement, Honor Flight Network, didn't begin until 2005. So my own personal introduction to that was in 2004. I had the opportunity to take my father and 4 brothers. So there were 5 Banz boys. Not the Band of Brothers, but the Banz brothers. And we were present at the national dedication in 2004. Fast forward, October of 2008, this movement that started in Springfield, Ohio, had made its way to Kansas, where my dad grew up, and he was invited to take one of those flights in central Kansas. And so he had spent a 2-day excursion on an honor flight out of Great Bend, Kansas. I had that as an experience and a reference point. Now, and having taken my own father, I was elected in the legislature in 2004, and beginning in the session of 2000, after the 2006 election cycle, I was asked to be the chairman of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. And we were always looking for ways. It's not a committee that gets a lot of legislation. You don't get bills parked there. It's kind of a formality, and you got to have a veterans committee. It's just a popular thing to do. So we were looking for ways to honor our veteran community and shine the spotlight on them. I get a letter from a constituent, and that was the genesis of the movement that got started in Oklahoma. So on the very front end here, I need to make sure that you understand clearly that what is captured in the documentary called Journey to Honor, and in the book, Just in Time, Oklahomans Honor the Greatest Generation, it is Oklahoma's story. It is how Oklahoma stepped up and collectively provided the resources for us to honor the greatest generation before it was too late. In other words, just in time. Because you see, in World War II, there were 16 million in uniform. And by 2005, when the national organization cranked up, there were only 2 million left. 14 million of the 16 million uniform had already passed away. They would never see their World War II memorial. When you extrapolate the numbers, our population versus the national population and the 2 million, we estimated that there was something over 20,000 World War II veterans still living in Oklahoma. We had no way of knowing how many of those were capable or willing to experience the rigors of a day of flight. But we got started. So I was one of the co-founders of the movement here in Oklahoma, and provided leadership throughout the course of the entire movement as the executive director. The book is divided into 3 sections. We talk about having a preparation phase, we had a participation phase, and we're now in what we're referring to as the preservation stage. There are about 340,000 veterans in Oklahoma today. As an all-volunteer organization, at the end of when we started running out of World War II veteran applications, we had a very tough decision to make. The Vietnam era veterans and the Korean era veterans and anybody that served since then and wears the uniform today deserves to be honored in a very tangible way. But our little volunteer group could not in clear conscience hold out the prospect of a free trip to D.C. for a day for 340,000 people. But we could carve out that niche of World War II guys and gals and make sure they had that opportunity. So it was an idea that would have scared all of us to death, and we probably wouldn't have attempted to move forward if we'd have known what was going to happen at the end, at the beginning. But like a lot of things, you move in the direction where your heart takes you. And I had a passion with that. I had a platform because I was chairman of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, and a lot of things began to coalesce around our opportunity to make that happen. The book is a quick read, but let me just give you the highlights real quick. We hung out our shingle in September of 2009 and began to hold out the hat and ask for participation. We took our first flight May of 2010. And by the way, we never initiated a flight until we had the resources either identified or in hand to underwrite the cost of that. And it was after doing our research, we understood that it was probably going to be best to use the charter flight approach as opposed to taking smaller flights with established airlines. So each flight ran us roughly $100,000. So we had to make sure we had the resources before we contacted any veterans and said, would you like to go? The national organization that had started in 2005 already had a backlog of 105 veteran applications that had been sent to Ohio asking for an opportunity, from Oklahomans, asking for the opportunity to go on one of these flights. So we started behind. We had the applications and we didn't have the resources, so it was all about trying to raise the money. We took that first flight in May of 2010. We took our last flight, number 24, in April of 2016. 22 of those flights were the big charter flights. 23 and 24 we partnered with Southwest Airlines, and it was a reduced amount because we'd already made the decision not to accept any more applications because they had stopped coming in. But we wanted to accommodate all of the veterans who had already submitted an application and make sure that they got there. So we were able to do that with our final 2 flights. So 24 flights. There were 2,055 Oklahoma veterans spent the day in Washington, D.C., compliments of the generosity of Oklahomans. It took us almost $2.5 million to make that happen. Those veterans came from 226 Oklahoma communities. And it made a difference. It made a difference in their lives and in the lives of those families, the immediate families and the extended families. And chapters in the book are devoted to their responses of having had the opportunity to be able to go. I'll tell you just one quick story that helps document the title. On our very first flight, Bonnie Cheatwood, the executive director of Midwest City Chamber of Commerce, was one of our guardians. Now, the guardians paid their own way. I went as the flight commander on every flight and paid my own way. They were assigned a veteran, and in some cases on those early flights, we only took 65 guardians and 100 to 105 veterans. So some of the guardians had duty for 2 veterans. We have the big send-off event the night before. We're gathering real early in the morning, i.e. 4 a.m. The veterans are coming down from their hotel room, coming in from, if they were local enough, they were driving in, picking up their credentials. We were check and roll, and Bonnie noticed that her veteran hadn't picked up his name tag. And he was a veteran from Tulsa, so he had spent the night at the Sheraton there in Midwest City. She goes to his room, and he opens the door, and she finds him there packing his bag with the intention of not going on the flight. She counseled him briefly, talked him back off of the ledge, so to speak, and he did make the flight. And it was sometime later that she received a note from him thanking her for being his guardian that day and giving greater explanation as to what was going on in his head and his mind that morning. You see, he had lost his wife about 3 weeks earlier, and he was in a very dark place. And he really needed to go on that flight. But he said, you know, what I would have done was probably got in my car and headed east or west on I-40 until I either fell asleep or ran out of gas. Bonnie was there just in time to be able to help him enjoy that. And according to his response in the thank you note, he says, I'm better now, and I have you to thank. The book is full of those kinds of stories. There's humor in there. There's a bit of humor in there. There's some pretty serious kinds of things, but it's an accumulation of what transpired in that period of time between September of 09 until we actually technically shut down the 501c3 in October of 2017. We had an MOU with the Oklahoma History Center, Memorandum of Understanding, and we transferred all of the assets of the 501c3, all of the memorabilia, all of the documents, all of the applications, all of the financial records that they could accept. They couldn't accept some of our financial records because of privacy issues, but all of that went to the History Center, including any asset that would produce revenue or income. We did the documentary. It was released last June in the Dead Center Film Festival here in Oklahoma City. It features 3 of the veterans who were on the final flight. They were all post D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge. One lives out here between Piedmont and Okarche, another one down here just west of Mustang and southeast of El Reno, and the other one was from Wetumpka. And I think he now has been relocated by his family to South Oklahoma City. By the way, on that final flight, we had a 103-year-old from El Reno. And it was quite a treat to have him there as well. But the documentary is 38 minutes long. Cox Communication ran it about a dozen times this last November over the 2 or 3 days prior to Veterans Day and the 3 or 4 days after. They ran it on their Channel 3. If you've got Cox, their dedicated channel for their promotional kind of things. It's very well put together. It's an Oklahoma company called Lampstand Media. The documentaries are $10. The books are $29.95. Steve will take $30. Actually, technically, on an environment like this, the cost of the book is $27.67 plus the tax makes it $29.99. So you make a penny donation to the History Center if you want to buy a book today. And of course, we'll be here to sign it if you want it signed that way. But it is Oklahoma history. And the foreword is by Bob Blackburn when he understood what all had transpired and taken place. The proceeds, by the way, are dedicated to supporting the World War II exhibits and the things that the History Center has in the way of property that relate back to World War II. One of which is a C-47 that is now part of the World War II display, or the Veterans Memorial display in Midwest City on Douglas Boulevard. It was a plane that was built at the Douglas plant in Oklahoma City, came off the assembly line March the 5th, 1944, flew on D-Day. And that plane has some other interesting history with it, but it is now in conjunction with the Veterans Memorial there in Midwest City. But the proceeds off of these items go to support that as well as the other things that they have at the History Center. There have been people a long time that have been doing some very significant things that you and I enjoy the liberty that we enjoy today. Even when we bark at one another and we believe things ought to go in another direction, I've heard it said it may not be the best system, but I'm here to tell you it's better than whatever's in second place. And I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to be an Oklahoman. And I thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. Steve will have the book if you want to do it. Thank you.